New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome to Ministers Talking a weekly program where Rev Briz and Rev Z and their guests chat about current affairs, world events, spiritual principles, and any old they want to talk about. Based on the New Thought philosophy and ancient wisdoms, Ministers Talking shares a visionary perspective of the evolving spiral called spiritual living. Join us each week as we explore the emerging paradigm of life on planet Earth and beyond.
And good morning, dear ones. Rev Briz with you over here.
And Reverend Bill. I don't have a Z. Over here.
Reverend Dr. Bill. There we go. We'll give you the doctor this morning. You have a doctor, so Reverend Dr. Bill. We're a couple of ministers talking shit. Reverend Elzia is traveling today. He is doing some important work in Kansas City, so we bless him. Wish him all the best on that work. And so I get to call in my friend Dr. Bill to come in and sit in and join us and give us you guys hear from us, from Elzia and I, more than enough. We're really grateful, Dr. Bill. Thanks for being here this morning.
I am so honored that when you need a foul-mouthed minister, you think of me.
I wouldn't say foul-mouthed. I would say opinionated.
I love doing this this program with you because it echoes me back to doing zany morning radio shows in the 80s.
Exactly.
And the 90s. And where I was completely unhinged and undisciplined and hadn't found the New Thought teaching. And it's interesting how different things are now and how it's really easy to get back into things being the same.
I've thought a couple of times I should go back and dig through the archives and try to find some of those old radio shows of yours. And I haven't done that research yet, but every so often it strikes me. It's like, yeah, I wonder what foul-mouthed Bill really sounded like.
I heard from a friend of mine last week, and somebody who I worked with in the radio in 1982 through 84 in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I haven't talked to him really since then. We're both part of the same Facebook group. And he said, hey, were you ever on this station at this time? Because there's somebody who's using because I met him before I took on my air name. And because he had found an air check of me. And it's like, oh, well, I was never on that station, but I remember exactly the tape that you're talking about because I did a demo to try and, when I was trying to get into morning radio. And I had wrestled up a whole bunch of friends of mine, and we went into the studio one Friday night and recorded a phony hour.
Okay.
And that's the tape that made its way. And then somebody else found it the same day. It's like, you're not going to believe this. It's like, oh,
your old demo tape showed up twice on the same day.
Yeah, and it's like somebody that had a cassette that they played back too fast and digitized. And I had a high squeaky voice then anyway, but this is like me on helium. Okay. Yeah. Flashback time.
Exactly.
And I'm going out of my way not to give you enough details about it so you can find it.
I was going to say, because I graduated, you're a little bit, more mature than I am. I graduated high school in 85. So, I was listening to New York and New Jersey and Philadelphia and listening to AM or morning radio across the spectrum at that time. So, don't give me any more details or I'll be able to find it too. Good morning, Wayne, all the way from Calgary. Good to see you, brother. Grateful you're with us. Trust you're having a good morning so far. Fiona, all the way from Geneva. Trust you're having a great afternoon so far. I know you've been hard at work already today. So thank you for being with us. All right. So let's dive into it here today because when I asked Bill this morning, what do you want to talk about? He brought forward, I think, what is one of the most pressing topics of our day, of what's happening right now. And that regards all this anti-transgender legislation that's moving through the state houses across the United States right now. I think last I saw, there's over 50 different bills in various places that are right now being debated. I do know that the governor of Kansas this week vetoed a slate of 4 different anti-trans bills in the state of Kansas. Now, my understanding is probably 3 of those will be the veto will be overturned by the Republican majority, and it seems to me that we're really drawing another line of separation in the country, if you will. And now it's around trans folks. So it seems like, I guess, if you're on more of the conservative side of life these days, at least in America, it seems like it's okay to be gay. Well, unless you're in Florida, but it definitely isn't okay to be trans. I don't get it.
And the thing that is the most astounding to me is, why do you care? Why do you care? If somebody goes into the bathroom and they have different plumbing than you do, does it make any difference? They're going to go out of their way to not make you uncomfortable. The trans community is not about making non-trans people feel awkward. It's
Right.
about being able to be themselves and feel comfortable with who they are. So why do you care?
I've never been hit on in a public bathroom. Right? Have you ever had a trans guy or walk up to you in a men's room and hit on you?
No.
I have never had that experience. I've never had a gay guy hit on me in a bathroom. So I agree, right? There's so much. We like to stick our nose in places it shouldn't be. We like to impose our morality on, okay, not the people watching this show, right, folks? It's not, but
It's not us, no.
America as a whole, it would appear we elect leaders that run the whole gamut of experience. We're going to talk about Zoe Zephyr here in Montana in just a moment, openly trans male legislator who was elected to the State House of Representatives in Montana, which means the people of his district know exactly, well, as best we can, who he is as a politician, and they still elected him. But the super majority of, well, let's call it like it is, old white guys are effectively silencing Zoe and completely shutting her down. They have barred her from the House floor in Montana for the remainder of the session.
And yeah, why is that American?
Exactly. And all because he's trying to be who he really is, his authentic self.
And the fact of the matter is that Zoe is speaking passionately against anti-trans legislation, and they're silencing the criticism because they don't want to hear it. And
Right.
There are people in the gallery who are cheering, and they're getting acknowledged by Zoe. Oh, you can't do that. There needs to be decorum here. And I'm thinking back to during the protests against Black Lives Matter, when the armed folks invaded the state house in Michigan. It's like,
Right.
that was disruptive. Okay, holding your fist in the air while people in the gallery cheer, that's public discourse. So.
Yeah. And my apologies. I want to be straight up clear. My apologies. I've misgendered Zoe. Trans female. My apologies to Zoe and anyone else that's watching and caught my mistake there. And I want everybody to know that that's part of this as well. Is as a parent of a transgender teen, I've been taught. It took a lot, and it takes a lot of learning, and we all make mistakes. And we all make mistakes in various ways around this topic. And the easiest thing to do is just to say, hey, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Let me try that piece again real quick. Let me rephrase that, or ask the questions. I think that a lot of it is people that are unwilling to consider that there's something different, or that something different could be valuable, valid than their own lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
And
for first of all, I'm glad that you caught yourself and that you brought that up, because this is not a destination. This is a journey. And there's an example for me that comes from being in New Thought of the same thing, and that's avoiding gendering God.
right.
So when I grew up, everybody, God is He. You refer to Him, and that was just the way that it was. And for the longest time, I was allergic to the word God, so I didn't use it at all. And then when I started using the word God, I didn't want to make it be He, because that cuts out half of the population, and also individualizes God and takes away the infinite, and tries to limit God. And I don't want to do that in my language, because God is infinite. And have come up with a few very interesting techniques for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I refer to God not as he or she or it, but as God. And that will have me tending to say, we turn our attention to God, and we know that God does this, and God does this, and God does that. Where other people would be saying that He is this, and He is that, and He is the other. Or he, she, presence. And I'm okay with anybody using any of that language. So I translate in my own head. I did have a member of my community at one point who revealed to me, after going through a whole bunch of the classes, that what really got her intrigued was, and she grew up Sufi, what intrigued her was when I called God it. She says, I'm in the right place. This is just what I need to push back against my Sufi parents.
I just had this image of the Dr. Seuss characters, thing 1, thing 2, thing 3, right? We could have God 1, God 2, we could have it 1, it 2, but I love that you bring that forward, because that was an important piece for me as well. And I think that in New Thought we see that, and there is the feminine tendency to want to push against the male labeling and use a female term, and then call God she. But that accomplishes nothing else either. That continues to perpetuate, as you're saying, the losing the sense of the infinite, making the divine a little more personal than it really is. It personalizes through us and as our lives. And I've said this so many times, we're now up to a little over 8 billion people on the planet, which means there's at least 8 billion different ways to get to God, to know God, to express God, to be this living demonstration of the divine. And again, we come back to, who in the world am I to judge you for whether you want to wear nail polish and let your hair grow, or if you actually want to surgically alter your body. That's got nothing to do with me.
Right. Don't compel somebody else to do it. And as long as somebody is mentally fit and consenting, none of my business.
Exactly.
None of my business. Now, there is one exception here, and here I'm going to go be the devil's advocate. There's one area in which I am objecting to the equality of the genders, and that's in women's sports. And the reason for that is, if somebody grows up qualified for the boys' swim team or volleyball team or whatever it is, and then because of their own gender identity switch to female, that's fine, but play on the men's team. Because there's a reason that there's a men's team and a women's team, and it's because men tend to be stronger and have the history of the bigger muscles and all the rest of that, which is why there's a difference. So, and it just gets it gets very murky.
Yeah, I think that it would be very hard to police. Well, you've to break that into percentages. Well, if you're 100% male, but you're taking estrogen and transitioning to female, how female have you become? We'd never be able to do that.
Right.
And I do see. I see what you're saying here. I think it's a very, very murky question that has so many layers of nuance. Because if that person did grow up as, let's say, a more effeminate, male-gendered or male-identified child, and never developed the muscle mass, never followed that path, it can be different. But right now, I think I agree with you as far as it's the biggest question in all of this experience. How do we determine, or do we just make it all one and everybody's got to compete as one?
Well, that undermines the value of women's sports, because there's an opportunity for women to excel when competing against people who have the same physical characteristics as they do.
Brittany Griner's never really going to be able to. I can't see that she'd be able to compete in the NBA.
Right, and we have a perfect example. We have a perfect example of how absurd this would be, because Bruce Jenner did pretty well in the Olympics as an athlete and a competitor, not playing sports, competing in sports.
Yeah.
And if that transition had happened much earlier, like how many women's medals, would that have been fair? And the answer is clearly no.
Right. True. If he was competing in women's sport, if he had grown out his hair and now her hair, and I agree. It is a great example.
And have nothing against any of it. And when we're playing sports, play with whoever you want. The same thing. And when you start competing and the stakes for the competition get high, then that's the point where we just need to be judicious about what equipment somebody grew up with and what resources they're bringing to the table and what makes them qualified to play.
There we go. All right.
And that's me deciding. Let's complain about something that's even easier to complain about.
Politics?
Don't say gay in Florida. It's like this is the fisticuffs that are going on between the governor and the Disney organization. It's just unfair. The governor is so outmatched.
True. And did you see the one the other day where they asked him how he felt about falling behind in the polls? And it almost seemed like he was about to have a stroke of some sort of neurological time bomb went off in his brain. And but again, we're coming back to, how do we tell an entire state that we can't talk about issues, and not even gender, but sexual orientation in this case? Mm-hmm. We're not allowed in our public school. And this is where, if you're not, if you don't know where this all comes from, DeSantis pushed bills through the legislature in Florida that make it illegal for teachers to discuss gender or sexuality of any kind, of any point at any time in their public school systems.
It started out being elementary schools, and now it's all the way through high school.
Right. That's not healthy.
No,
it's not healthy to avoid the conversations.
If you remember back to your own education, and I put education into 4 broad categories. Elementary school is where you learn to go to school and be in school with other people. Middle school is where you learn to go to school with hormones.
Nobody likes that.
Nobody likes that. High school is where you learn how to learn, and then at the end of high school and into college is where you learn how to think.
Yeah.
And in high school is where we do all of our norming. So if you're not allowed to talk about sexuality, then when are you going to talk about that, and with who? And if you take the authoritative people out, so you can't discuss it dispassionately in a classroom, then it's going to be on the playground or in the
Right.
in the alley.
Yep. And the playground and the alley are notorious for having disinformation,
Yep.
inaccurate information. We know that in the classroom, the experience is being more controlled, more shaped, and you can have true to the age group conversations. I can't imagine. There's a reason we do basic sex education in middle school, because these kids don't know what they're going through. Even if mom and dad sit them down and talk to them, they often don't know what they're going through. And that's one of the experiences I hear again and again and again and again from the trans population is, I didn't know what this was. I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know if I was normal or if I was different. I just knew was my experience. And to have good conversations with our peer groups may be difficult, especially for middle schoolers, but it's absolutely necessary. All of our social ills seem to come back to people that don't want to listen.
The number of stories that I've heard about, people who grew up knowing that they were different and agonizing over it, and then finally finding themselves, and then how am I going to tell my family, and then finally getting up the nerve to come out, then tell mom, and mom says, "Darling, everybody's known that since you were 7."
Right, exactly. So
why didn't you tell me?
Exactly. Yeah, you all knew. Why didn't you make it okay for me?
So, and don't say gay bill, which Disney didn't say anything about originally, and then because their employees got really annoyed,
right,
finally came out and made a statement. And now there's this tussle back and forth because DeSantis has positioned himself as being anti-woke, as if woke is bad, and woke just means open to some new idea and new possibility, which is why everybody in New Thought goes, isn't that what we're all about? So,
yep.
How do you have something new happen if you don't open yourself to something new?
Yep.
The the Disney folks, the employees, the people who work there, and it's the biggest employer in Florida, insisted that the organization push back against it, and then DeSantis started trying to take away their special tax status, and he's now drawing the line, and I'm not sure if he understands that Disney was built by gay men. The animators, the ones who made and a huge number of the Imagineers. It has been very gay friendly and gay dependent. I mean, if you go back and look, especially at the really early Disney movies, they're so gay. And they're great.
And they're great.
And they're great. And so, the thought of pushing back against that now is kind of absurd. And so Disney keeps on doing things in court and in the court of public opinion. And Disney will continue winning because Disney is really, really good at shaping public opinion.
Yeah. And they've got a lot of money to back it up, to hire the lawyers and do the research and do everything. Our friend from here in Colorado, Linda, a little bit earlier in our conversation says, we're seeing an active wave to destroy democracy in America. I know it appears that way, Linda. And there's a piece of me that maybe doesn't want to believe that if it's true. But there's also a piece of me that recognizes that wave is attempting to roll back progress and is attempting to roll back into, we're going to say the word, a more what they consider conservative time. And I think that's what DeSantis is trying to do here, is trying to say, we want to create a utopia, our own little place, our peninsula down here of deeply conservative values and create our own world of conservatism that is Florida. However, I don't really believe that's possible. Right? There's now talk of Disney moving to North Carolina or Texas. I know that when this first started, Colorado offered Disney a deal to come move to Colorado, all these things. That doesn't solve the issue. Running away from the fight, running away from this type of separationists that I think DeSantis is trying to do in Florida isn't realistic. It doesn't do any good for the overall progress of our country, of our human race. And I don't think the majority of Florida actually believes what he says. I don't think the majority. I think politics are so skewed these days that it doesn't really take a majority to get in office. And the next thing we know, we have more of a cult of personality operating than we do actual representation.
Yep, and there's huge echo chambers that are going on. That's one of the disadvantages of social media, is that you can choose what you're going to hear, and then when it echoes around there, that's all you're hearing, and it's being amplified and amplified. So there is a bunch of that, and for conservatism, and I put this in the radical conservative category. Where we don't need to have alternative energy, and we don't need to have, these lives matter, and we don't need to let anything change, and we can tell people what their family values should be, and that you can't tell me, because of the church that I go to, what kind of cake I have to make for somebody else's wedding.
And we definitely don't need women voting. Don't forget that one.
Well, we don't need women voting. We can make it more difficult for people to vote unless they look and act and vote like us. With big data being what it is, it's much easier for politicians to choose their voters than it is for voters to choose their politicians, just because of where the knowledge and the information is. You say the things that the people who you're talking to want to hear, because all you need to do is get them to vote for you once, or to not vote against you once, and then the whole process continues for another 2 or 4 or 6 years. But my favorite example, and my thought is, eventually this is going to come around anyway. Either democracy will completely topple, which I think is unlikely, because we tend to be a pretty feisty country when push comes to shove.
Yeah.
All the stuff that's going on with the abortion ban. The country is now pushing back against that. It's like, we were perfectly happy to have Roe v. Wade in place and let the conservatives rail about how horrible abortion was. And it's like, just keep talking, it's fine, leave things. And now it's changed, so now it's an active part of the conversation. And it turns out in 22, it actually made a difference in the way that people were voting.
Yep.
The perfect example, and this is like the natural order version of who's allowed to play on which varsity sports team, is climate change. So here's Ron DeSantis, and he's against all the wokeness and all the change and everything else, and he's the governor of Florida, and Miami floods on sunny days. Mm-hmm. So all the pontificating and all the positioning and all of the ultra right-wing conservative news shows are not going to change the fact that on sunny days Coral Gables is underwater.
True.
So. And you're going to have to eventually deal with that, because otherwise you have to move out of Miami. And of course, it's a very liberal section. So maybe if you evacuate Miami and have everybody move to Tallahassee, it'd be better. I don't know. I don't think it's going to work. I think that there's going to be some pushback.
I just saw a glimmer of hope. You reminded me that one day Mar-a-Lago will be underwater too.
I lived in South Florida in Broward County when Hurricane Andrew came through in 1992. Mm-hmm. So I remember what it's like, and I've seen the devastation. And I never, under any circumstances, would pray for a hurricane to hit a particular place.
Right.
But I would be interested to see
the
confluence.
They're part of the natural order.
That's right. Yeah, and, it's not like Mar-a-Lago hasn't had its share of hot air, but.
There's another one. Let's talk to Linda again. Woodland, Colorado, where an evangelical right-wing church is succeeding in getting a majority on the school board. Yes. And Colorado has traditionally been a purple state. We do currently have a representative who shall not be named, and who, but this is the call to action, Linda. This is the opportunity for people across New Thought to say, okay, am I ready to stop sitting on my hands and get involved? Right? Am I ready to say, I'll run for a school board seat, or I'll run. We were talking with David Alexander last week. He shared with us a website, Just Run, I think, if I remember it correctly. But the point is, millennials or younger, they're a grassroots political action committee group that help young people run for office. And one of the things I've heard is, and I heard this recently, is, if you're a middle-aged white guy like me, if you go to the Democratic Party and say, I want to run for an office, the first question they're going to ask you is, good, how much money can you bring to your campaign? Now, we know that the younger generations don't have the kind of money that they expect to bring to a campaign, and these organizations are now supporting and funding these younger candidates. It doesn't mean that those of us in middle age or with a bit more maturity and experience can't get involved somewhere. And to bring the New Thought philosophy out into the world. For the longest time, it seems like New Thought has believed in this. If I just change my own consciousness, the world's going to change around me. And that is true. But that does not change the world very far around you. It changes.
Pray and move your feet.
Exactly. Yes.
So this is ministers talking stuff. So I'm gonna nominate Linda Plasters for the school board there in Woodland Park, Colorado. Go for it. And and when I say that, Linda, and you say you hear all of the reasons in your head why that could never happen, and you're not qualified, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then find out who is. Maybe your job is to nominate somebody else, but there is a way to push back when the nonsense starts happening. And there's an organized evangelical church that says we are, we're the chosen ones and we're right, and there are a lot of us, so let's get together and do this thing politically because we all agree religiously. It's like, that's not the way the country works. We were actually founded by people, not Christians coming over here to be Christian, by people who were running away from organized religion because they couldn't practice their faith the way that they did at home. Yeah. So, is this the full circle? It's time to do that again.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me that Clearwater, Florida, the are those that we are often confused with but have nothing in common with Scientology. The leaders of Scientology have been trying to take over the city council of Clearwater, Florida forever. But the citizens that aren't a part of that religion, the citizens that do not want to see that type of influence in their city council, continuously active in making sure that they don't let that happen. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't Scientologists on their city council, because that city is very influenced by that organization. They own a lot of land, they throw around a lot of money, they have a lot of power in that area, but they make sure that they they keep the council balanced and don't allow something to be overrun. I also heard this recently. These are the types of cases that prove to us how much our vote matters. Mm-hmm. Our votes matter to get the two gentlemen in Tennessee reinstated to their positions in the state house there. Our votes matter that Zoe Zephyr is sitting in a bench outside the floor doing her work and doing the work that the people of Montana elected her to do. Every voice matters. We didn't mention this, but the In Montana, the governor's son identifies as non-binary. Well, and I just made him binary. Sorry, young one. But the governor's child identifies as non-binary and is lobbying their father. Imagine
and the whole administration.
And the whole administration, right? And Linda's saying, at over 70, always voting, part of the political scene. And yes, thank you, Linda. It is more than okay to voice your opinions. It's absolutely necessary. And that's what I'm getting at. It's necessary that we stop being so quiet about what we know and what we believe and start voicing that through editorial letters to the editor, through standing up at a meeting, to going to the council meetings and being part of the gallery and adding to those public input opportunities and such.
Yeah, and just to know who we're voting for and what they stand for. We've got, our election day is coming up here locally in my town in Pennsylvania. And it's one of the elections, it's an off year and it's for municipal and county positions. And it's the one that would be the easiest to just skip. But right. Not gonna at this point, because those are the groups that set the tone and the tenor of our neighborhoods. And it matters. It makes a difference. The township decided that they, and this is like 10 years ago as part of their plan, that they wanted to increase the population density along the Central Corridor, which is the commuter train line. Mm-hmm. And started allowing lots of condos to be built. So there's $1 million luxury condos, both sides of the street and the train tracks. And I guess they're wonderful, but they didn't widen the roads. they didn't increase the parking. So it's just gotten congested to the point where, when I need to drive up and down the main circuit here, it's like, I'm not sure if I want to, I do have to pack a lunch in order to to make it into another nearby suburb. And those decisions were all made by well-meaning people who got voted into positions of authority. And I've been to some meetings and objected to some stuff and asked some questions. But that's how we do it. Know who you can vote for. Make an informed decision to find somebody who's going to be aligned with what you want, and then vote. And then vote. Yeah. And then vote. Having an opinion and not voting doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yep. Take that inspired action, right? Take the inspiration that comes to us through this philosophy. And I agree. I do. I add meditation to my voting, because it's sometimes tough to know exactly what maybe an initiative is trying to accomplish. You hear things from both sides or exactly what a politician believes. So take your ballot into your spiritual practice with you and let your divine intuition support you in informing what you believe in, but then vote on that and stand behind that and keep showing up for that. Zoe Zephyr's fight doesn't end at the end of the session when she's allowed back onto the floor of the State House in Montana. That diligence has to keep happening. We don't oust the politicians we don't believe in or that we believe are doing harm without staying with it. Here in Colorado, Lauren Boebert lost by less than 500 votes in the largest congressional district of our state.
She won by less than.
I'm sorry, she won. Yeah, she should have lost, but she won.
It's still wishful thinking for you.
Still, but the point is, her opponent didn't stop. He didn't take that as a loss. He didn't take that as a defeat. He didn't take that as, oh well, my vote didn't matter, and the people that voted for him didn't stop. They're continuing. I've actually thought about moving to the 3rd district just so I can vote for the guy. But the people of his district are continuing to do the work and saying, I want my voice heard. Seems like far too many politicians get elected and then we got no clue what we elected.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can bring in awareness. textbooks are a classic example. Go get the textbook that they're using in your local school to teach history and see if it covers history the way that you recall or think or opine that history might be taught. Because there are a great number who characterize the Civil War as having been fought over taxes.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the crux of it. There was a bigger issue than taxes. I mean, taxes was in there, but there was there was something else going on there. And if you don't, by the way, if you don't know, then do some research on that. I'm not going to educate you now. But there was an issue besides taxes that caused the Civil War.
I'm just finishing James Cone's book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree. Amazing piece of work. Deeply educated Christian theologian that helps white America remember that we crucified an awful lot of black bodies following the Civil War. All right, that's a conversation for another story, for another Friday morning, perhaps.
We didn't even have time to talk about cults.
I know.
You'll have to have me back.
We were all prepared to talk about whether or not we're in a cult or not, folks, and we didn't even get there. So, Dr. Bill, will definitely have you back. Next time, we'll make sure LZ is here to join in the conversation, because I'm sure he's going to watch this and go, "Oh, I would have loved to have been a part of this one." But we want to thank you for being with us, folks. If you don't know, Reverend Dr. Bill's got a program here on the New Thought Media Network. It airs Monday mornings at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. He records his podcast and gives you a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to put together a podcast. He and his co-host Carol Lawrence get together and share with you everything they do to get ready for their podcast. Then they record their podcast, and then they give a bit of time for you to ask questions and join in the conversation. That happens Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And as the senior minister of New Thought Philadelphia, you also are gracious in sharing with us your Sunday talks. And so we broadcast the Sunday part of our All Day Sunday series, Sundays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. I don't work Sundays. Somebody else does that for me. So
it's 4 o'clock for me.
4 o'clock for you. So 2 o'clock Mountain Time. You can catch just the talk on our All Day Sunday. Reverend Bill from New Thought Philadelphia. Sir, again, thank you so much for being with us. I can't wait for us to be together again, and we'll get you scheduled in here again real soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, you, Rev.
Thank you. All right, folks, we're out of here for now. Please do stay tuned. Sekou Writes and Be Your Own Hero is coming up next. Morning prayers at 8:15 is normal. Rev Melissa with Morning Sip. Emma Moreno with Spanish language programming at 9. Remember, Monday we start Spanish prayers at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time. That's going to be really fun. Spanish only prayer time at 9:30 on Mountain Time. Today, it's Practicing Infinite Possibilities at 10 a.m. with Lindsay Lineback. 1 o'clock is The Joy Show with Rev B all the way from Toronto, Canada. I'll be back at 5 with the good news, and Reverend Michael at 6 with the Fireside Chat. Until next time, we wish you all a great weekend and a great day. Join us again. Like, share, and subscribe with your friends. Do all those things that help us get this network out there. Until next time, I wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.